Hello everyone. This is the 50th part of the story, Mārvēl Unlimited Skills, I Can Download. Chapter 289, Collapsed Earth, Rules of Death Awakens. Bruce held the Soul Stone. It began to radiate a mysterious orange glow. God's telekinesis permeated the stone, allowing Bruce and the stone to communicate. He commanded it to pull Mephisto into the plane of soul. Seeing Bruce as the current owner of the Soul Stone, the stone responded to this message. An orange beam shot out, aiming at the gigantic body of the ancient demon. Mephisto, who was about to open the portal and leave Earth, was immediately locked in place by the beam. What is going on? Mephisto looked around in surprise. He found that the space around him was locked. This also prevented him from teleporting back to the plane of hell. That orange glow was also imbued with the law of soul. For a moment, he was in the grip of this power. When he was about to fight using law of fear, he sensed the aura of law of soul. It was very familiar to him. After all, Mephisto was a demon playing with souls. How could he, with the rules of souls, be insensitive to the aura of the Soul Stone? After careful observation, he finally understood. How can this be? The law of soul. Mephisto looked down at the orange glow and saw Bruce, holding the Soul Stone, growing larger. He then slowly flew towards him. This damned fellow again. Mephisto thought angrily. His real self was entangled by the masters of other planes. As such, he could only send an incarnation. Originally, he could still use the rules of souls that's far superior to Bruce's. He would break free, acquire the Soul Stone, then kill Bruce. However, his projection could not use the full power of rules of souls, so he was suppressed by the Soul Stone. Its power was so strong that only the power of the multiverse could suppress it. He could no longer hold on. He secretly gathered the law of fear to suppress the Soul Stone, and he shoved the other part down his throat. He was going to force Bruce to give up, and then kill him. Human, stop now, and I will spare your life. Mephisto emitted the law of fear in the form of sound waves. Bruce could no longer shrink himself. He could only hold on, otherwise Mephisto, freed from the grip of Soul Stone, would have rushed upon him and killed him. Bruce knew this point very well. It was unlikely that an ancient demon like Mephisto would make the same mistake. Bruce pushed the light and dark wings to regain some magic power. However, it was all in vain when he sensed the rules of fear Mephisto cast. His body ran cold. He was losing control. The only way to fight it was to exert the same level power. Even if Bruce had the same characteristic power of rules of fear, he could not fight it. That was the difference between quality. Even if that was only 1/100th of Mephisto's power, Bruce still found it difficult to resist. Bruce knew that whether he continued using the Soul Stone or counter Mephisto's rules of fear, he needed a more powerful power. The power of the rules of death, which destroyed Apocalypse's flesh, was already used up. Give up. Don't hold on any longer. You should be afraid. Give up in now. Bruce's mind began to breed a series of negative thoughts. Will I give up just like this? Bruce's light in eyes was dimming and he was slowly closing his eyes. Seeing him, Mephisto was excited. Well, that's it. Give up the fight. I shall eat your soul. It must be delicious. Mephisto could not help licking his lips. Everything seemed to be coming under his control. Could Bruce turn things around? No. Just then, a wave of law from the dark converged on Bruce's body. It was pulled by the rules of fear. Under the control of God's telekinesis, Bruce radiated heat again. By a hair. Bruce was very lucky. At this moment, he could feel the power of death raising again. He heard the cries of millions of people as they died. No, I have a home. I can't die yet. Why is the earth like this? Who's going to help me? Woohoo! What's wrong with them? Why are so many people dying? Using God's telekinesis, he found it. The earth was no different from its end. The explosion of Apocalypse's shield not only killed millions but also affected Earth's core. It was like it was hit by another planet. Seawater rose and oxygen was depleted. Massive earthquakes and volcanic eruptions also destroyed the atmosphere. The temperature was rapidly rising, while natural disasters were escalating. Humans and mutants alike were dying in the process. Mortals couldn't face the forces of nature. These natural disasters killed a lot of life entities, but also fueled the law of death. Only Hela or a cold-blooded deity like Apocalypse would be excited about it. Bruce wasn't. Although he acquired the rules of death by chance, he wasn't blinded by power. The strength given to him by these deaths were like giving him their last wishes. He must pay them back. The power of the gods came from the creatures of the planets. Only those revered by these creatures deserved to have these strengths. Although Bruce had mastered the rules and became a god, he did not lose his humanity. He knew that if he didn't do anything, the disasters would only escalate. Although Earth would still be salvable at that point, humans would already face extinction. If the extinction of human beings occurred, Bruce's efforts would be in vain. He knew about that, so Bruce did not hesitate to use the law of death he newly acquired. He coldly looked at Mephisto, and infused all of his remaining power into the Soul Stone. The Soul Stone shone brighter as it was infused with this great power. Mephisto, however, stared at Bruce in disbelief. It can't be. How can you have the power of law in you? Chapter 290, Official Breakup with Professor X. Seeing Bruce hold the Soul Stone, Mephisto recognized it. After all, it was something outside the body and couldn't represent Bruce's true power. So, he took it as Bruce's luck. But after noticing Bruce's power of law, Mephisto wasn't calm. Power of rules wasn't the power of law. Seeing a human want to control it was just a joke to Mephisto. An ancient demon like him knew that controlling the power of law was too difficult. It would be impossible for a mortal to control these powers. More so, it would take a long time just to comprehend the law. Even a true god who wanted to comprehend a cosmic law wouldn't be able to succeed without tens of thousands of years comprehending it. On the other hand, most of the laws were often in the hands of multiverse beings like him. Mortals who dared challenge such beings were obliterated as soon as they met. Even if Bruce could survive meeting them, how long would he need to cultivate to comprehend the law? For Mephisto, Bruce didn't even seem 50. He traveled back and forth between various multiverses for tens of thousands of years, and he had never seen a freak like Bruce. At their level, they wouldn't even hesitate to trade their own planes to acquire a power of law. The power of laws could fascinate every ancient being. Mephisto could feel that what Bruce showed was the law of death, one of the most supreme divine powers. How could such a power be wielded by a human? Could he be a servant of the goddess of death? Taking advantage of the last moments the law of fear was fighting with the law of death, Mephisto was pondering about it. But as soon as his projection was shot by the orange beam and dragged into the soul plane, the connection between the original and the projection was severed. The Soul Stone was originally an underestimated gem. People would only often remember how difficult it was to obtain the Soul Stone. They knew that in order to acquire it, they must first kill their most beloved. It was precisely because of this that Thanos had to kill his daughter, Gamora. Inside the Soul Stone, there was also a parallel plane that was equivalent to a small universe. When Thanos snapped his fingers, those who disappeared were sent into that plane. They existed in the form of souls. In other words, everyone that was killed by Infinity Gauntlet was sent to this plane. Although their bodies turned into ashes, their souls did not vanish. They were just trapped in the soul plane. As long as the owner of Soul Stone was willing, he could resurrect these souls at any time. According to the system's power rating, Bruce must be at least universe level in order to exert the true power of the Soul Stone. With Bruce's current strength, he could open the soul plane, but he could not save the imprisoned souls. Otherwise, he could enter the plane in the Soul Stone and resurrect Gamora. Pulling Mephisto's projection into the plane of soul, Bruce saw the huge body resist it, but no matter how he struggled, only the will of the Soul Stone was invincible on that plane. In that case, it was just like in the Dark Plane. It was impossible to kill Dormammu without destroying the Dark Dimension. All of the aura of the ancient demon's projection was sucked into the small universe. In the plane of hell, Mephisto was sitting on his throne. The throne's handle was crushed by his grip. He had always believed that his projection, which possessed 1/10 of his divine power, was already quite worthy of the earth plane. The result was still messed up. It was foreseeable that unless Bruce released this projection from the soul plane, Mephisto would lose that part of his power. If it weren't for plane masters like him, they would all manage the existence of one realm and could not do everything by themselves. He really wanted to kill Bruce. He had not only failed to acquire Apocalypse's soul, but he also lost to Bruce. It could be said that go for wool and come home sure. After I resolve those birdmen in heaven plane, I will seek justice through Death God. Mephisto still attributed everything to the Death God. He still didn't want to believe that Bruce could control the law of death by himself. Boom! Mephisto's huge demon body slowly stood up. It looked like a giant who holds the sky and the earth. In the end, he got up and left hell. After preparing to settle the immediate crisis, he would save his face from his projection being defeated by a mere mortal. Inside Xavier School, Professor X called Magneto to the academy, and the two decided to work together to resist the coming natural disaster. At this stage, the United States government had initiated a series of measures. Most human beings were protected by the government. Only the mutants were still exposed on the streets. They had lost their human rights. They were like discarded children, staying on the streets waiting for the end of the world. Professor X used Cerebro and tried his best to summon all the mutants outside. Magneto was suspended in the air, his hands facing the ground. He switched on the Earth's magnetic field and protected the surrounding area of Xavier School with a magnetic shield. This allowed Xavier School to survive. Charles, this is not the way to go. Don't call on the mutants. Magneto saw the crowd still trying to squeeze in and helplessly told this to Professor X. This shield was the limit that he could bear. However, Charles still summoned the mutants. If it wasn't for Bruce, how could the world end like this? Charles shouted in anger, then floated towards Magneto. He has been staying in the academy to hide his strength. In fact, his ability far exceeds mine. By connecting to X-Men's brain near the battlefield, Charles saw everything. Bruce's true strength had already reached the legendary 6th-level mutant, and only then can he compete with Apocalypse. The world became like this because of Bruce and Apocalypse, but these two culprits were gone. Charles continued to complain in dissatisfaction. His ability enabled him to hear the voices of dead humans and mutants. All these deeply stimulated him. I want to expel Bruce from Xavier School. Chapter 291, Endow Energy, Early Awakening of Phoenix Force. Beep! The emergence of human genocide on Earth is detected. New mission has started. Save the humans and mutants on Earth. Bruce received a new mission from the system after he sucked the soul of Apocalypse into the Soul Stone. Even if the system did not issue this mission, he had decided to save the present Earth. Still, Bruce knew that he did not have the power to alter reality, so he could only use Jean's Phoenix Force. As the supreme cosmic law beyond the 5 gods, the Phoenix Force could completely restore everything on Earth to its original appearance. With this in mind, Bruce used void movement to teleport himself back to the Xavier School. A ripple of space flashed, and Bruce returned to Xavier School. When he appeared, he saw Charles and Eric. He heard Charles preparing to expel him. He knew that from this moment on, he and Charles were at odds against each other. Bruce knew that this day would come sooner or later, but he didn't think that it would come so soon. Charles, after this, I'm leaving Xavier School. Leaving this to Professor X, Bruce headed for the Phoenix's room. Well, you have the face to come back. Charles still looked at Bruce disapprovingly, but did not notice that a black light rose above his head. Magneto looked in the direction of Bruce's departure, then mumbled, "Isn't he Gambit's master?" His name turned out to be Bruce. Inside the Phoenix's room, The little girl sat on the edge of the bed in a daze, while her friend Wanda continued to comfort her. "It'll be all right, Jean. I'm sure Bruce will come back for us." At Wanda's words, the Phoenix shook her head. "It is useless, and he can't solve the problem." "How do you know if you haven't tried?" Just as they were talking about it, Bruce flew in through the window. When she saw Bruce, who had light and dark wings floating behind them, Wanda's eyes lit up. She rushed toward Bruce. "Well, Bruce, why did you come back so late?" "It's okay, Wanda. I'm here. Don't worry." After comforting Wanda, Bruce went to the Phoenix. He decided to use Endow energy to speed up the awakening of the White Phoenix Force and then restore the world back to its original state. "Jean, close your eyes and try to shut your other personality." Phoenix tried to resist at first, but Bruce immediately used God's telekinesis to control her spirit and strengthen the spiritual cage set by Charles. She sat motionless on the spot and looked at Bruce obediently. After all, the Phoenix Force Jean had now was still in the stage of awakening. It, of course, could not compete with Bruce. But if there was a power that could kill her, Phoenix Force would surely awaken early to protect her. Bruce, of course, was not going to do this. He was just trying to make Phoenix obey him for the time being. He didn't mean to hurt her. Phoenix Force would not attack him for no reason. After confirming that the Black Phoenix Force could not affect Jean, Bruce put his hand on her head, activating Endow energy. All of a sudden, the light source began to demand energy from its surroundings. Around Bruce, mottled points of light appeared. This light energy was then injected into Jean through Bruce's palm. It began to catalyze Phoenix Force. Ah! A white light came from Jean's eyes. A white phoenix suddenly appeared behind her. The white phoenix sent out extreme repulsion, sending Bruce out of the room. Boom! After a loud bang, Jean's room was shattered by the force, and the whole building shook. All the students ran out in panic. They thought the scourge had begun to engulf Xavier's school. Charles frowned and prepared to examine Jean, but steel bars suddenly appeared beside him, tying him up. "Eric, you!" Charles looked at Magneto in disbelief. "Don't interfere with her. I'm sure she won't do anything wrong." "Really? Do you want to wait until she destroys the whole planet?" Eric shook his head, ignoring Charles. In the sky, Bruce picked up the falling Wanda while opening Phoenix's stats. Name, Jean Elaine Grey. Identity, Phoenix Level 6 Mutant Abilities, White Phoenix Force, unable to load, Dark Phoenix Force, unable to load, Rules of Phoenix, 400W Energy Value, Gravitational Manipulation, 300W, Material Decomposition, 200W, Phoenix Enchantment, 200W, Phoenix Mind Control, 200W, Telepathy, 180W. Sure enough, the power of the White Phoenix was catalyzed by the light source of Bruce, and it strengthened her ability to that of a level 6 mutant, as well as an awakened Rules of Phoenix. The newly awakened gravitational manipulation also destroyed the house, sending Bruce's powerful body out. "Jean, feel the Phoenix Force. Believe me, you can restore everything to its original shape and resurrect these dead people." Bruce steadied his body, emitting a strong sense of God's telekinesis to lead Phoenix. Jean's eyes moved slightly. She seemed to feel her change, too. Then, she fluttered her red wings, which were condensed by the White Phoenix Force. She floated in the air. She closed her eyes quietly, and Bruce waited patiently. After a while, Jean opened her eyes again and frowned. "No, Mr. Bruce, my powers have awakened successfully, but they are not strong enough to change reality." "What? It's not enough?" "It's okay. Unless your life is in danger, Phoenix Force will not fully awake so early. Endow energy is quite powerful, that has strengthened you at such a stage," Bruce murmured, then looked at Wanda. "But I have another idea." Bruce then used his other hand to strengthen Wanda. Immediately, what had happened to Jean was repeated to Wanda, but Wanda did not push Bruce away. Instead of manipulating chaos magic to keep her body afloat, she continued to snuggle in Bruce's arms. Apart from her eyes that looked at Bruce became a little cleverer and clearer, nothing seemed to have changed since the past. Bruce, however, could see in Wanda's fleeting eyes that she was stronger. More so, she recalled everything that happened before they came to the X-Men parallel universe. Chapter 292, Remodeling Life, the perfect combination of two supreme powers. Looking at the new Wanda, Bruce opened her stats. Name, Wanda Django Maximoff. Identity, Scarlet Witch. Level 6 Mutant Ability, Chaos Force, Unloaded. Modify Reality, Unloaded. Rules of Chaos, 400W Energy, Chaos Magic, 300W Energy, Magic Ball, 200W Energy, Flight Ability, 100W Energy. Item, the Magic Book of Transportation, 100W. After reading Wanda's new stats, Bruce knew that Wanda really had the power to protect herself. Whether it was the Phoenix who had mastered the rules of the Phoenix or Wanda who had the rules of chaos, they became gods of their respective realms after awakening the power of rules. Unless the enemy had the same level of divine power, human power could no longer influence them. Patting Wanda's head, Bruce pretended to resent her and said, "Wanda, if you wait any longer, everyone outside will die." "I know." Wanda had disengaged from Bruce, and her body emitted a scarlet glow. She floated to Jean, grasped her palm, then she mixed the chaos force with the mutant ability to modify the reality and sent it to Jean in a steady stream. Jean didn't make any resistance during the whole process. They already communicated with each other through God's telekinesis and knew what they should do. Combining their powers made their bodies become more and more hot. Then, Bruce saw a powerful force that was powerful enough to create a whole world. With those two at the center, a continually growing circle of creation expanded. Wherever it passed through, mountains and rivers were restored. Rivers were no longer dried up. The clouds of smoke returned to clean air. There were even sounds of insects and birds in the woods. In Bruce's body of God and devil, the balance of the three powers was also beginning to change. Most of the death powers in his body were gone, and the fear powers began to blur. Only the power of the rules of thrones was constantly on the rise. This showed that the dead were gradually reborn in the creation. Fear was also gradually out of their minds. The Killer Union would also die in the face of this natural disaster. As the master of the Killer Union, Bruce regained his due power. The more people he governed, the more powerful his power became. Bruce used God's telekinesis. He could perceive the earth returning to its original form, and the dead were being resurrected. Phoenix Force mixed with Wanda's rules of chaos was a perfect combination to everything that was lost on Earth. In Xavier School. Because of Charles's summoning, there were mutants standing all over the place. The mutants soon noticed the changes around them. A flash of light in the sky restored everything to its original form. They couldn't help but look up into the sky and then look at the two people in the air. Magneto, seeing that the outside world had returned to normal, lifted the shield and floated toward Bruce. Then, he saw the bright faces of Phoenix and Wanda, who were like two gods. Eric froze for a bit. "Mr. Bruce, this is..." Bruce smiled at Magneto's stunned look. "Yes, Mr. Eric, the world has changed because of them. Soon, everything will be as it was." Seeing that the mutants around the college were still unknown, Bruce frowned and then sent his thoughts into the minds of everyone present. He told everyone to leave and erased their memories of the disaster. After seeing the mutants of Xavier School gradually leave, Bruce continued to spread God's telekinesis to where the restoration was happening. He erased all memory of the disaster from the entire world. In this way, everything was back to what it was before he fought with Apocalypse. With the exception of Professor X, Magneto, Phoenix, and Wanda, no one would ever remember this. After everything was settled, the two goddesses opened their eyes and stopped the spread of the divine power. Their faces looked gaunt, and with the last of their strength, they fell slowly to the ground and separated. Bruce saw Wanda's appearance and knew that she was suffering from overuse of her powers and that she would be all right after a few days of rest. He took her into his arms. At this time, Charles also broke free of Magneto's restraints and sent Jean back to the infirmary. 3 years later. In one of the villas of the Killer Union, Bruce sat on the sofa, reflecting on the events of the past 3 years. He and Wanda left Xavier's school 3 years ago. After the World Reset event, humans and mutants still coexist in the X-Men world. During this period, the three forces of mutants all achieved a period of vigorous development. Cyclops grew up and took over the role of captain. He led the X-Men to solve all kinds of problems that the US government could not solve and won positive comments around the world. Of course, he became a hero in the hearts of mutants. The awakening Phoenix naturally became the strongest force of the X-Men. Magneto's Brotherhood also grew rapidly. Eric eradicated an island occupied by pirates and established a mutant state completely controlled by the Brotherhood. Quicksilver identified with Eric as his son and joined the Brotherhood. Meanwhile, Eric learned through Quicksilver that Wanda was also his child and Bruce was his son-in-law. He suddenly understood everything. He found Bruce, then brought Nina and her mother back to mutant country after being protected for a long time. A year ago, he also found his other daughter, the mutant Polaris, so Magneto had 4 mutant children. Of the 4 children, Eric's favorite was Polaris. Polaris was not only similar to him in character, but also in ability. The Killer Union had connected underground forces around the world over the course of 3 years. Around the world, there were bars and entertainment venues with Killer Union's labels. For the members of the Killer Union, the core of level 2 mutants and above had expanded to millions. Just then, Wanda, dressed in a sexy Scarlet Witch clothing, approached Bruce with a smile. By this time, Wanda had regained her age in the Avengers universe. "Honey, do you know who I saw today?" "Vision, I saw Vision and Little Spider-Man." "What?" Bruce suddenly raised his head and looked at Wanda seriously. "Did I hear you right?" This marks the end of part 50 of the story Mārvēl Unlimited Skills, I Can Download. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.